Kei ngā maunga whakahi o te motu, kia ara te ua tū mai rā. Welcome to Mata with me, Mihingarangi Forbes, brought to you by Te Māngai Pāho and Irirangi Te Motu, New Zealand on Air. Later in the show, we'll speak to former national candidate for Tāmaki Makaurau, Henu Rewa Te Hau, and Victoria University political scientist, Dr. Lara Greaves. Engari mātua rā i tēnei hōtaka, kia tahure te aroaro ki te pire mō ngā mātāpono o te tiriti. Opposition to the ACT Party's proposed treaty bill legislation continues to grow, with former National Minister Hekia Parata describing it as a misuse of the Select Committee and backing calls to boycott the process. It comes after a group of mātanga reo Māori language experts criticised the bill for mistranslating the text of Te Tiriti. A draft of the bill is expected to be released to the public this year. Kāti, hei horatu I ōna ke whakaro mo tēnei take, here to share his views on the bill as well as David Seymour's treaty directive to Pharmac. I'm joined now by Labour's Māori Development spokesperson, Willie Jackson. Tēnā koe e Willie. The Treaty Principles Bill is close, we understand. Hekia Parata is calling for a boycott, as you heard. She says that it should be the Select Committee should be an echo chamber of that small, easily identified crowd. Strong words, you think, from a former National Minister?
Well, the meaningful words too, when you take into account her background, her history. You're not talking about, some two-bit MP. You're talking about one of the star performers for National. Really proud to see her come out like that. But that's in support of so much kōrero. I was having a look at some of the kōrero this morning before I came in, and I looked at Margaret Mutu. She called it an unspeakable violation. Natalie Coates, Natalie probably the most foremost young Māori lawyer in the country, and she said it was the most flagrant breach of the treaty in modern times. Chris Finlayson, Hekia's former colleague, is just furious in terms of this. Andrew Kibblewhite, Secretary of Justice, he said there's no support for it in legislation, judicial interpretation and expert opinion. I mean, it's just everywhere, Mihi, everywhere. Jim Bolger came out against it. Doug Graham came out against it. Professor Andrew Geddes came out against it. He's Pākehā. We're not just talking Māori here, calling it totally reckless. But this Seymour, he knows more than everyone.
What kind of impact would that have, the Hekia Paratas, yes, the Chris Finlayson, what kind of impact will that have on the senior leadership of the National Party?
Well, I think huge impact. And to be fair here, you do have and I don't like being fair to the other side, but to be fair, and just to take one step back, I don't believe at this stage that the Prime Minister has balked on this or blinked on this. He's saying they're just going to Select Committee, but there's so much damage, I think, being caused by what he's doing. And let's be clear here, and I'll be interested to hear from your experts later on. It's almost been introduced anyway, hasn't it? If you have a look what's happened in terms of Pharmac and all that, it's almost the treaty principles have been introduced by stealth. Where else and when was the precedent that the former acting Prime Minister sent a directive to one of our major agencies directing them to ignore their obligation? I would have thought that...
Would he say that he is the Associate Minister of Health and he has the platform, the right to do so? Yeah,
and that's what he's saying. And I'm saying, and as I said, I'm interested in some of our experts, and you got a couple of really good commentators coming up interested in their views, that surely that's a breach of the Constitution. The treaty is part of our Constitution, and you've got a senior minister, acting Prime Minister at the time, yes, probably operating in his associate health role, directing this agency to no longer take into account the Treaty of Waitangi. In my view, that's a breach of his responsibilities in terms of the Constitution. I think it's absolutely shocking when you look at work of Pharmac, when you take into account the Ministry of Health, Mihi, and they have every day they are looking for ways to honour their obligations to the Treaty of Waitangi, and then you have this guy come out with his opportunistic strategies. I won't go down the racist line. I'll go down the opportunistic line because I think that's what he is. I've said before and I'll say again, maybe the most dangerous, maybe the most dangerous politician in New Zealand history, because we've never seen this type of behaviour before. We've heard Winston moot it during the years, and Shane Jones, they've mooted this type of behaviour, but we've never had anyone who's actually introduced this against all the experts from all sides of the spectrum. I think it's a total disgrace.
When you say dangerous, do you mean creating legislation on the hop, or creating directives like David Seymour did to Pharmac to give any weight to the references of Te Tiriti or Waitangi in their strategy? Is that the kind of stuff you're talking about? Yeah,
and it's probably not even on the hop. This has been planned for the last couple of years.
What I mean is it's not going through select committee. It's not being socialised with the public.
Yeah, but he going through select committee now, he's getting all the publicity in the world, and I think that's incredibly dangerous, because what you have is, when if you listen to the arguments from Seymour, and you don't know the history, and you don't know the background, and you don't know that there is a special right for Māori, it all sounds very wonderful, doesn't it? It's all, we are the world, you're such a lovely, wonderful man, David Seymour. What's your problem, Mihi Forbes? What's your problem, Annabelle Lee? What's your problem, Willie Jackson? Why can't we all be equal? And he says he's playing this "We Are the World" tune, and can I say again, taking one step back, playing it well for his audience, and so anyone like us, we're radicals and we don't want to debate and all that. But I've heard you try and debate it with him, and you just don't get any sense coming back.
I wonder though if your position is the same as his, because Pharmac, he says that he wants health to be delivered, health outcomes delivered, underpinned by robust data and evidence in accordance to the statutory responsibilities. That's kind of what you're saying too.
That's exactly what we're saying.
So what's the difference?
Well, that's exactly what we're saying. The problem is he's not listening to the robust evidence that has been coming back, and the robust evidence is telling us that Māori are dying earlier than Pākehā, 7 years earlier. The robust evidence is telling us that access for Māori is, at times, particularly for our people, our whanaunga, is almost on the edge of impossible. That's what it's telling us. So he tries to make out that we're just talking about things from an ethnic perspective. No, we're not. We're talking about it from evidence-based position. We're talking about it from a needs-based position, and everything in those areas tell us that Māori need support, and that the obligations of the treaty need to be honoured so that we can close the gap. So yes, we're talking the same type of kōrero, but he's doing a spin at the end of it. He's putting a spin on it, and it's a very, very ugly spin.
After 3 years in the role, Dr. Anthony Jordan has resigned from the Pharmac board, and actually this kōrero was based on this event that's happened in the news. He says he cannot represent the views of the agency given the directive from Associate Minister of Health David Seymour, which is to stop factoring the treaty into decision making. Is it a slight on the government that really intelligent and experienced people like Dr. Anthony Jordan are stepping aside from boards? I'm really proud of him. Of course, they put the ugly spin on it that because he's a partner to Shannon Halbert, who's one of our MPs. I can assure everyone, nothing against Shannon, but he's his own man and a proud young Māori male who makes really conscientious decisions. He's done that in this case. Well, he was a lead in the pandemic for the North.
Exceptional.
He's one of two Māori in immunology in New Zealand.
So don't try and taint a guy just because of who his partner is. I'm pretty sure he ain't a member of our party. I might be wrong, but I don't think it's got anything to do with that. It's got to do with his conscience. It's got to do with his politics. It's got to do with his principles, and I mihi to him for that decision. It's a shame because we need brilliant young Māori like that involved in this kaupapa, but of course it's a slight, of course it's a taint, but again, Seymour won't take any notice of it.
The board chair, Paula Bennett, has acknowledged that Dr. Jordan's contribution to the board has been through significant mahi contribution to Pharmac's strategic direction and operational focus over the last few years. So what happens now? Is that a complete rewrite for the strategy? Do they have to redo it? Because Dr. Anthony Jordan would have worked on a strategy that involved te tiriti as the basis of it. Does that all out the window now?
Well, they'll be looking for a replacement who is not so pro-treaty, not about. They'll be looking at a treaty, someone who's not so fixed on the treaty. So I think you'll see a pullback there. And the sad thing about that, it won't complement what's been in place in terms of the Ministry of Health, in terms of what we were wanting to do in terms of a Māori health agency. So we're going to have something that'll set us back even further. I think that's very sad.
Just coming back to the kōrero that we started with Hekia Parata, she's a really experienced politician. She knows what select committee is, calling for a ban, if you like, or to stay away from select committee. Could that work?
I very well. That's another. I'm not sure. If I'm being honest, I think it's a great suggestion. It's probably something we chuck into the mix as we look to oppose this bill. That's something we have to consider seriously.
Whether Māori groups stay away from select committee or whether they go fully 100%.
It's a tricky one. I remember when Uncle Sid and them, Uncle Māori Jackson and them, they used to say, "Don't participate in voting. Just don't turn up." I'm not sure if that was. I disagreed with that strategy, even though I had huge respect for those uncles. I'm not sure if the non-participation sometimes it can work against us. That's my experience, because people say, Māoris weren't interested, and now you've got what you've got.
Speaking about your Uncle Moana Jackson, he worked on Mātiki Mai, Aotearoa, and wanted greater protection of te tiriti by enshrining it into constitutional arrangements. Could Labour have done more?
Oh, no doubt. I was proud of what we did. Could we have done more? Well, let's be clear on this. Maybe we were getting destroyed, and we're still getting destroyed today in terms of what we did. You hear them in the House, whether it's Winston, Shane Jones, the other side, they cause separation, they cause division, they push too hard in terms of kaupapa Māori areas.
You did have a lot of power at the beginning, though. You could have passed anything. We passed gun laws in 7 days. Could you have passed He Puapua?
I don't know if we would have got. Well, He Puapua was a recommendation, but we passed a heck of a lot. We got through Matariki, and we set up the Māori Health Authority, and we
had we have socialised He Puapua, we might have not had New Zealanders, as you say, who are like, it's all fair, carry on. Yeah,
but I think when you put in Māori seats, you put in a Māori Health Authority, you have a national Māori holiday, that probably sent a few of them off the edge. But I'll tell you this: I don't believe what we did. Really factored in most New Zealanders' views. I think most New Zealanders, and that's what we get back from focus groups, for most New Zealanders it's about cost of living, it's about housing, it's about education, it's about health. And as much as Seymour and Winston and them want to push things, it was because of Māori, most Kiwis are good. I think most Kiwis are grown up, they're mature. Lots of good Pākehā people. You see that over, particularly in the under 40s, under 40s, under 45s, they've got their head around the treaty. They believe in partnership. They like the way that Jacinda and the way we were going. So I don't think Māori kaupapa, despite them trying to push it, was a big factor at all in changing us as a government.
When you were Minister for Māori Development, you often spoke out of turn. You often got yourself into trouble with the rest of your party, and even in Cabinet. E tino atama ki te kawenata I Wainganui Aua Pāti e Toru. He's very committed to the coalition agreement. When you are the Minister for Māori Development, do you have to be committed to the coalition agreement? Can you stand outside? What's the difficulty for tama pōtaka in this space?
It's hard for any minister in any space when they've got their own issues, but you have to find a way to to raise things. You have to find your own way of raising things. You've got to get involved in the strategy. When they send out letters for the cabinet, which is what the Minister of Finance does, you've got to say, well, where's mine? Where's my letter? Because a lot of times Minister of Māori Affairs, or I'm not saying I was left out, but a lot of times, you can be left out. And if you're left out, you don't have to go to the media. You just go around the back and say, I want to be involved. I demand to be involved. Might get you into the odd punch-up every now and then, but that's the price. You don't go there just to have a cup of tea and do the maze.
Tēnā koe e Willie, thank you for your time. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe. Kia ora. Kia ora me.
Ko Willie Jackson tērā, Labour Party Māori Development spokesperson. Kia tahuri ake tātou ki te pai tōranga pū inainei. Here to discuss the latest in politics, I'm joined via Zoom by Victoria University political scientist Dr. Lara Greaves for the very first time on Mata, former National Party candidate for Tāmaki Makaurau, Henurewa Te Hau. Tēnā kōrua.
Kia ora. Mihingarangi.
Just off the bat, Willie Jackson suggested that the current directive by the Associate Health Minister David Seymour to stop factoring the treaty into decision-making could be a constitutional breach. Lara, your thoughts?
Yeah, I imagine this is one of the many, many decisions that will be challenged in the Waitangi Tribunal. And I think that, ultimately, it's quite obvious to see if you say, okay, completely disregard fertility and decision-making, that's what you're going to get fundamentally is a challenge.
Mm. And Henurewa, I guess working in a coalition is not the easiest, but you've got Associate Health Minister from one party making directives to a health organisation seemingly over the top of the actual Health Minister, which is Dr. Shane Reti from National. How do you see it all working?
Well, having treaty references removed from legislation, I'm not a fan myself. We've worked too hard to get to this particular stage. Let's hope that though he may be our social minister for health, that our party, that the coalition will actually look at it in a way and say, look, there's a reason why we have these clauses in there. There's a reason why it's there.
And Henurewa, what do you make of former National Minister Hekia Parata's response that New Zealanders should boycott the Select Committee process?
Well, look, it's a good response from our Marikura Hekia to something that shouldn't be happening. I do disagree we should boycott it, because I think that based upon the coalition agreement, the way that it is currently, is that we need to have a voice on this one. All Māori and non-Māori need to have a voice on the treaty bill. Obviously, my personal opinion is I would like National to withdraw its support from the bill. That, to me, would be a good thing, so that it doesn't go to the first reading. But as you know, with coalition agreements, and you asked this question of Willie, is that we are in a coalition agreement, and therefore the party has said we'll go to the first reading, but it won't go past that. So there's that level of trust and faith, which I suppose is what Te Tiriti is all about, that, within the Māori Crown relationship, that will not happen. Well, I'm fingers crossed that it doesn't happen.
Lara, is it common to hear former senior ministers like Hekia Parata speaking out against the former parties?
Well, I think we've seen more of it, in recent years. And I think really Hekia Parata's position is that outer states person now, that kind of person who's respected across parties, across contexts. Chris Finlayson's probably in a similar position where, across issues, he's a former minister that's well respected, I think, across the political spectrum. So I think that, Hekia is really in that position where, if she's talking, people are listening. And I think people will consider the boycott idea. And I do agree that the boycott idea probably, it's worth considering, but I just don't think it necessarily would work. I think that you'd have to get huge buy-in across really the whole opposition to the bill in order for that to work, or you're just going to end up with some perspectives not being heard. But definitely a really interesting idea when, Seymour and others are talking about democracy and a group chooses to say remove themselves from that democracy. I think that that's a really interesting perspective worth considering.
Henurewa, how has this bill or the idea around it gone down with, the traditional Māori national supporters?
Well, I was asking some of our, avid National Party Māori supporters that question this morning, and similar opinion to myself. They're not happy with this, but at the same time understand why it has to occur, but the key thing I think is that we can't allow this to defeat us within those of us in the party, that we do need to make a submission, which is really important, and all people need to make a submission on this. We can't always agree with other political parties either that we're within, This is one of the examples. But there is also the opportunity for within the party that if it doesn't go past the first reading, to show that we are a te tiriti partner. We do have within our values, we recognise the value of te tiriti, as a founding document, as our founding document. So, that's something that as Māori members of the National Party we focus on. We focus on that and making sure that.
Are you expecting the Māori wing of the National Party to be making a submission against the bill?
I would suggest that as individuals we will make submissions. I can't see us not. If we know who's in our party wings, they're all very vocal people. So it's up to us as individuals. I suppose there's only two Māori electorates, and as Māori electorates we will come together to discuss this, and that's part of our democratic right within the party to be able to do that.
Will it affect the party's ability to make inroads with Māori voters, do you think, Henurewa?
Yes, most definitely. If it goes to a second reading, most definitely. If National, doesn't stick to we won't go past the first reading, and Luxon has said it won't go past the first reading. So, but if it goes past beyond that, yeah, it will have an effect. It will have effect in such a way that, because National has, from my perspective, and though many may not think this, National has done good for Māori through the various governments. When you hear people like Dame Jenny Shipley, Bolger, Finlayson, who are not happy about it, you go, there's a reason for that. So yes, it will have an effect on our Māori voters in a big way. And as a result, we can't allow that to happen. And in allowing that sounds really tough, kōrero, but when I say allow that to happen, it just means you've got to have voice. You cannot allow yourself to not have voice. All of us have to mobilise in a certain way to be able, whatever political party we're in, and vote against this.
Lara, can you talk us through the bill's passage through Parliament? How will it work?
Yeah, so what we're awaiting for at the moment is the exact wording and like a copy of the bill, so to speak. So Active launched a website where they've kind of doing a frequently asked questions and a bit of an explainer. And we do have that form a leaked copy of what some of the principles might look like. And we're seeing the Māori Translators Group come up against that. We've got that piece of information so far, but we don't have a full copy of the bill. So we're going to get a first copy of the bill. It's going to go through a first reading process in Parliament. And we know from the coalition agreement, it is going to go to select committee. And then there will be that select committee process, which we've talked about today already, where people can make submissions on the bill. I think in that process, we can expect a lot of campaigns, a lot of organised campaigns, I think from a more pro-Māori, pro-treaty perspective, but also from the political right. I think we're going to see groups like Hobson's Pledge, create pro forma submissions and try to encourage people to submit on it. So I think that it's really shaping up to be one of our sort of most submitted on bills, I think, of all time in New Zealand, up there with other important social issues like marriage equality. So I can see that process playing out. And we're not really sure what the timeline of this is yet. And the other thing that we're not 100% sure on is whether, National and New Zealand First will kill it at that point. I think that a lot of people are still quite concerned about the idea of it going any further, or going to something like a citizens-initiated referendum where you run around and get a percentage of the electorate to sign up to put it to the polls anyway. So
what kind of numbers would they need for a citizens' bill?
It's 10% of registered voters. So you need about, give or take a few, like probably about 300,000 signatures. And the system's recently changed. So I believe that you can collect them online as well. So I think that that's something that we can expect to potentially see if this doesn't go any further. Because one thing that we fundamentally know about the ACT Party is they're well-resourced. They've got money. They've run a lot of campaigns. There's several organisations like the Taxpayers Union sitting there that are willing to and ready to mobilise and create that kind of campaign.
Yeah, I mean, some Māori are saying, feel like, there's a pattern of policy that singles them out. When you look at policies like the abolishment of te aka whai ora, the rolling back of the smoke-free legislation, removing of Treaty of Waitangi references, names, all those kinds of things. Hinu rewa, do you think that's a fair assumption? Māori can feel a little bit like they've getting a bit beaten up?
Yes, I think they can. It's a fair assumption that they can feel that particular way. But, if I look at where this coalition are going, I can really only speak for National, I can't speak for the other two. But, this is within the party feeling and thinking. It's always been around increasing efficiencies, decreasing costs, and looking at what the sustainable pathways are, of which Māori are very much a part of that. And of course, our data, especially in our health and education, show that we're below par where we should be. So therefore, you can't take us out of the equation, But we can certainly feel that way, and everyone can have that mamai at times around political governments and where it's going. But I go, look, you've got to focus on the positive, focus on what is occurring, look at the needs base, and the data is there to support Māori that we are definitely, part of the supply and demand where we need to improve equity and fairness.
I guess that's what Willie Jackson's saying as well, is they're actually saying the same things. It's like, let's make policy underpinned by the robust data and evidence. Do you have faith that Dr. Shane Reti, will be able to roll that out over the next couple of years?
I think so. I mean, Dr. Shane Reti is very focused on a social investment model. He's very focused on increasing the numbers within our hospitals so that we can, meet the needs of those who are disadvantaged. He's big on that. We saw that through the rollout through COVID. He was at the front of helping and supporting our Māori communities through the north and all people through the north. So I think he can. We just have to give it time. We haven't done a year yet, but let's see. Within the first year of our government. Yeah,
just before we go, Lara, the resignation of Dr. Anthony Jordan, thoughts around that? What does the future of Pharmac look? He's been really involved in the strategic planning, and it looks as though it might have to have a bit of a rewrite or unpicking some of the parts of that.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the governance of a lot of our main sort of agencies and departments and Pharmac and things along of that nature, they need Māori representation, and that's just the nature of demography and the direction that New Zealand's going in. So we need, other than the Constitution, of course, we need Māori representation in those spaces. And I think it's really hard for Māori at the moment, just colleagues and friends having to weigh this up of, if you do end up in that governance position, if you do end up on something like a board, that you will need to put aside the ability to, say, speak out against the decisions of that group, of the ministers and things of that nature. If you look at, say, like the Public Service Association, the board guidelines there. So, respect to Anthony Jordan for, putting his money where his mouth is, putting his morals and his views out there and resigning ultimately. But it is a difficulty that I think a lot of young Māori and Māori emerging leaders are facing at the moment.
Hinu rewa te hau, Dr. Lara Greaves, ka nui te mihi kia kōrua. Taipari, tai timu, ko te tai o mihi mai o hā ka riri tonu ki a koutou e aku whakataitei tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you to our guest today, Labour Party MP Willie Jackson, political scientist Dr. Lara Greaves and commentator Hinu rewa te hau. Ka nui hoki te whakaute ki a te Māngai Pāho me irirangi te motu nā rawa tēnei hōtaka I taunaki. We'll be back in a fortnight. No horo mai.